Welcome to Education 101 with your host, Erik Wolfram. Education 101 is about the amazing education community we have in the greater Spokane area. We highlight the outstanding programs, teachers, supporters, and opportunities of the education community in the Spokane region. Education 101 is brought to you in part by STCU. Here's Erik.
And welcome to Education 101. I'm your host, Erik Wolfram. So today we're going to be talking about blurred education and kind of the state of education. And with me today, we've got Doug Kaplicky, who, Doug, I got to know through working a little bit around the region and some of the schools that I work with as well. But then in 2017, he was honored by being the State Principal of the Year, which was very cool. And now he's started a business called Positive Focus Group and going around the nation and doing a lot of talks around kind of that state of education, blurred education, and how, a little positive vibe around how we make this education thing happen. So, Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored and humbled to be here.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
You bet. Well, I'm really excited to have you here. So, I've gotten the chance to kind of follow some of the work that you've been doing lately, and I tell you, you've been busy and you've been around the country.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about maybe your background too,
Sure.
because I know you were a principal when we did some work,
Sure.
but what you're doing now.
Sure. So, it's been an interesting ride. In about end of 2015, 2016, I started opening up some doors to do some speaking engagements. It really got launched with AWSP, which was the Association for Washington State Principals. Right. However, my background, even before education years, actually had a chance to work in marketing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And
nice.
Yeah, it was kind of a fun opportunity. I had a chance to play some college and some my pro independent ball, and after getting released 3 times in one summer, it was one of those things where I needed to go find real work.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity to go work for the Los Angeles Dodgers minor league system, and it was a piece of presenting. I was presenting in schools and had the opportunity to work.
Really?
Yeah, and so I had the opportunity to work in a lot of schools, and I just fell in love with kids and grew up in a home of 2 educators.
Okay.
And so I got in and just absolutely loved teaching and coaching, and then all of a sudden you blink and you wake up and it's 18 years later.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And it's kind of interesting, Dodgers in the World Series now, right, for you. So, it had to be some of the outreach type stuff.
Right.
You must have been doing some of that. And,
right.
In that 18 years later, after you did that, I mean, you've spent some time as a principal.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of, credentials that go along with it, not to mention the Principal of the Year in 2017.
Sure.
So you had the chance to go through that, and then you stepped out and you were like, I'm going to do Positive Focus Group.
Yeah.
And so talk to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big step.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm still, completely humbled by the opportunity that was provided with that award. But it's a team. Any type of award is a team award. I had some great staff and had some really amazing mentors and some strong colleagues across the state. But I had this on my bucket list to always go out and present. And one of the things I loved as a building principal, I loved going out and presenting in front of ASP, in front of assemblies. So I launched 3 areas. The 3 areas that I launched was I had an opportunity to write an article for an educational journal called The Cards You're Dealt. And the cards you're dealt is primarily for adults. It's going into companies. And the cards you're dealt are different things. Like if we were in a large group and we were in a workshop, I might pass out envelopes. And everybody gets different cards. And so we talk about whether I'm working with businesses or I'm working with educators or kids, teachers.
Right.
We never know what cards we're going to be dealt. we never know who our diamonds in the rough are. We never know. And it's all based on metaphors.
You bet.
So it might be, who is the hearts of the organization? Who don't we want to get clubbed by? And then I always have fun with a little bit of sarcasm with the spades, because I kind of talk about David Spade. You got to keep on keeping on.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a lot of fun, and there's a lot of humor tied to that presentation. The one that I've really enjoyed recently is going into schools, and I dress up as kind of a gang member, and I do the first part in Spanish, and I come out in a wheelchair, and it's called "Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover."
Right.
And so don't judge a book by its cover. And then I go into talking with the kids in an assembly environment through Snapchat, through their Instagram, the bullying aspects, the depression aspects, and the huge trauma that's going on right now within schools.
Right.
So,
So, and that is a huge piece. I mean, you take a look at trauma. You know, on the cards you dealt piece, I like that activity, and just thinking about it. You know, I do some Danielson training for the framework, and one of the things that we talk about is the complexity of just teaching in itself. You know, with the idea that it's you're dealing with, if you're in high school, 150 kids that come through your classroom every day. That's 150 different cards, you know, that are coming through to kind of figure out what are their needs along the way. And so just being able to kind of, whether it's business, and I like that aspect too of bringing that business side into it. To say,
absolutely.
You know, shoot, it's not that different, even though we're in two different worlds.
Yeah, and I had a chance just to kick off the school year this last year. I was going from even a tiny little and incredibly talented group of teachers in Wilder, Idaho, and in a couple days before that, I was in Massachusetts on the Cambridge campus at Harvard, working with some of the 2022 grads.
Yeah.
And so it went from a transition of a really small environment to a collegial environment. And the thing of it is I just constantly see that relationships are key. Chemistry is key. It doesn't matter if we're in corporate America. It doesn't matter if we're in a first grade setting. What are the relationships? And those are some of the key items that we kind of address.
Right. So. And I'm with you on the relationships. I mean, that's been kind of my philosophy all along from my teaching career, and just that idea. I think relationships really builds in that trust piece, you know, and you got to have that. I mean, we can put ourselves into any situation where, do you trust the person? And if you say no, you're not going to bend over backwards for them, you know. And I think that's that leadership piece. Whether you're a teacher working with the kids have to trust you, and if they trust you and you have that relationship, man, you get a lot done.
Well, and I think you and I both have had conversations in several areas of the growth mindset, and I think it's been a very humbling experience over, you know, probably about 18 months or more of just how to grow and trying. I feel like at times I'm feeling like a brand new student teacher, and you know I'm trying to work a craft that's brand new to me. But not only for myself, but I'm having a chance to team. Instead of teaming with a school of 600, I've now had a chance to reach out to 20,000 kids and trying to team, and then follow up emails and some follow up with staff members, and some that are not even in education, that are, you know, in some businesses that I've had a chance to work with.
So talk to me about some of the businesses. I'm curious about that you've gotten in there, and have you done some of those same activities?
Yeah, there's been a couple of, a little bit. The cards you're dealt thing has been something that's really big. Another one that I've been tying pretty heavily in is called the social emotional backpack. And it's the trauma, not just in schools, but within businesses. We don't know what's happening when somebody walks in the door. So when we have somebody walk in the door, it might be empty nest syndrome. They might have a brand new baby at home. They might be trying to take care of their parents. They might be trying to deal with things. When they walk in, it's business time. But I think we also have to have an idea of some of the things that those folks are going through. So I think so when I've walked into businesses and had conversations, it's been just having conversations like this and just saying, you know, what are the things that you guys are going through?
Yeah. So with that, do you see, you know, so there's the relationship piece with that, and almost that empathy of saying, I don't know what card you're bringing with you when you come in the door. But then there's that piece over here of, well, you need to drop all that and get to work and do your work.
Right.
Do you find that that's kind of a bumping of the heads a little bit from time to time?
Eric, it's funny you say that, because we had an off-camera conversation about just being dads.
Right.
And I loved our conversation. It was just brief, but I sit there and go, oh, if I could have had the knowledge as a coach and even as a teacher with my kids now that are teenagers. It's the same thing. Even there's so many different things I would probably do differently as a leader in a larger setting, just because I've had the opportunity to pick up a lot of different skills. I mean, you have very strong, humble leaders. You have very strong, leaders that have a different approach. And it's one of those things where if you can just snag a little bit from each person,
right.
And that's been really. I work with two of my colleagues that I work with, Taj Jensen, who runs Turnaround Schools. Taj is a elementary principal in Tacoma. He does turnaround schools. Every time I talk to Taj, I'm in awe. I mean, he's kind of a specialist, and every time I sit there and I'm in awe. Trevor Green was our national principal of the year, and Trevor and I is a business partner, and Trevor is in Highline School District, and I love just having conversations with these guys. Just having conversations, go, wow, take me through that, and how we all can get better, and then how do we use that in a consulting environment?
Right. And it's funny to bring back that whole parenting thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about my first few years, as a teacher. It's that old saying of, those first couple of years, you just want to go back and tell all those kids, yeah, I'm sorry. So, I do it better the next time. But even with the kids, once you have your own kids, I think that sets it up. I think because I think it's one of those pieces where you understand a little more about what things kids are bringing.
Right.
I've got a son with anxiety that we deal with, and so I start to think about bringing some of those things to the table, and how would I have modified some of that, those lessons and things. I taught in a tough low-income school, middle school, for a lot of years, and I remember in the beginning when I first got there, it was one of those, okay, you didn't turn your homework in?
Right.
All right, well, I understand, but it didn't take me long to go, I have no idea what you're dealing with. Once I started hearing some of those stories, and so how do I modify it to say, let's build relationships, and you know what, that homework's not that important. Let's get some of this stuff done in class.
Right. And
you know what, go do what you need to do, take care of yourself, and then come here to this safe environment, and let's just do our thing. So. And
I love that, because I'm finding myself the same thing with my kiddos, and I think we were going to probably talk about some aspects of testing and some of those that, the transition of that anxiety of testing. But I did think it was interesting. I had a chance to facilitate a webinar in Finland. And there's no homework. And Finland is one of the they're one of the leaders right now. With we've been in tons of states, but just the opportunity to team with some folks in another country was completely eye-opening.
Had to be.
It just, I mean, there's the homework is not there, but they're one of the leaders in education right now.
Yeah.
And I asked a lot of questions about testing. I asked a lot. I mean, I was supposed to be facilitating.
Yeah, but you were asking.
I found myself going back to that growth mindset of like, wow, I want to learn more. I want to hear more.
Yeah.
So it was it was a very I love listening to different folks and different systems, all the way from Massachusetts to Florida. I mean, there's totally on that East Coast is a totally different system than what we have on our, and even Washington to Idaho is a totally different transition with testing.
I think about even with our 59 schools within our ESD region. I mean, each one
see that.
Talk about each one has their own personality.
Right.
So you know what, Doug? Let's do this. Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And then let's come back and get into some of those other conversations, testing, and maybe some of the things, the book and so on that you're working on, research that you got going on. So
great.
So we'll be right back on Education 101.
Is your child having trouble coping with a personal disability, but don't know where to go? Consider our friends at Breakthrough Incorporated. Breakthrough takes great pride in mentoring their DDA clients who have intellectual disabilities and their BRS clients who have challenging behaviors toward the creation of safe, appropriate, ethically sound life goals. They integrate programs at school and home to enrich their lives. They work hard to make a positive difference in you and your family's lives. Breakthrough provides a highly structured, fully staffed residential setting in local neighborhoods, 6 in Spokane and 2 in the Tri-Cities. diagnosis affect people differently, so their service to each resident is unique, giving them the opportunity to grow and evolve. For more information on Breakthrough, visit their website at breakthroughincorporated.org.
What? You haven't been to the library lately? Stop in today and see that the library is more than books. Spokane County Library District facilities feature on-site technology, including Wi-Fi, computers, and printers, as well as free use of meeting rooms. The Library District offers events and programs for all ages, from story times to career development and employer classes to Social Security workshops. Our staff is well trained and happy to help. Find out more about your library at scld.org.
Welcome to Tom Sawyer Country Coffee.
Tom Sawyer Country Coffee only roasts the finest organic coffee for our signature blends. Enjoy a cup at our coffee shop and local businesses and organizations across the region.
I'm Tom Sawyer and we choose the Pacific Northwest.
And welcome back to Education 101. Again, here with Doug Kaplicky, and we're talking about, kind of the state of education, some of the things you've been doing with your positive focus group. And right before the break, we were talking a little bit about, I mentioned about anxiety, and we were talking a little bit about that whole idea where testing comes into play of it. And you were talking also about Finland and homework and some of those things. And, but again, it comes back to that idea of building relationships, knowing our students, and being able to make adjustments based upon them and building the relationships and the importance that that has. So let's get back into the whole idea of anxiety and kind of some of the testing. I know we've had some of those conversations.
Yeah, and kind of following up on that, I mean, on the relationship piece, I think that, as teachers, we have so many amazing, talented teachers across, and teacher assistants, the paraeducators that I work with are just amazing. But it's oftentimes we plant that seed. And I talk about this a lot, especially with staff, is you plant that seed, you water it, but if you plant it in the heart and the mind, amazing things are going to happen. And I always talk about it, I'm sure you've seen this too, is the bamboo theory. I don't know if you know the bamboo theory at all? Okay, the bamboo theory, in Thailand, you water bamboo. I promise I'm getting somewhere with this.
Okay, good.
You water it. Oftentimes, bamboo will not grow for 3 or 4 years. You water it, you cultivate it. And I talk about that with a lot of middle school people and even high school people, because what happens, once bamboo hits daylight, it'll go 60 to 90 feet.
Right.
So oftentimes in education, if I'm a second grade teacher or I'm a seventh grade teacher, we oftentimes don't get to see that bamboo grow. But you planted that seed in the hearts and minds. And so often these kids, our commission check sometimes is somebody reaching out to you on Facebook and saying, hey, Mr. Wolfram, thank you so much for what you did for me in such and such. And those are powerful moments. And so
they are.
But you had to spend that relationship, that anxiety, those kids that have that anxiety with different things, and giving them hope and try to give them something. How can I help them learn the way they need to learn?
Right. I love the analogy of the bamboo. I hadn't heard that before,
really?
But I really like it.
Good.
With that idea, because how many times do in education and even beyond, I would guess too, do we kind of go, that's so and so.
Right.
It's all right. You're not going to reach them.
Right.
That's so and so. You're not going to reach them.
Right.
But to know that, you know what, they may have a few hard years.
Right.
But guess what? Once it clicks. It's that once it clicks, they're going to shoot way up. And I completely agree. Something that you said really resonates with me about why we do what we're doing, because of having those kids come back.
Right.
My dad was a teacher, and I tell this all the time, but when he passed away about 8 years ago, it was one of those things that at the funeral, it was kids coming back.
Oh, I love that.
And that's what the crowd was, to be able to say, man, he made a difference.
Right.
He believed in me.
Right.
He was the one that, so those are the things that really make a difference and are exciting to see and exciting to keep in our minds. But again, it comes back to the relationship. Those comments weren't, Oh, yeah. I remember he taught me what the standard algorithm for long division was.
Right.
No, it was he believed in me, and I made me believe in myself,
Right.
those
That's
kinds
so
of things.
true.
And that's that relationship piece.
Yeah, and I mean, even those that are listening to to this or watching it, ask yourself, what do you remember about 7th and 8th grade?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, oftentimes it's something sports, something social, something musical, maybe art, something. It's usually a social type of aspect or the multi-intelligence type classes. It's not the test. And I mean, and I don't want to, I mean, I think data is important. I do. But there's oftentimes we have to remember what we were like, and things have changed.
Gosh, yeah.
Things have changed so much. And what, years ago, how quick things are now with social media. I mean, I got kids when they're driving and they're snapping in the back of the of the car. I don't even know what's happening in the back of my car
Exactly.
when I'm driving them around. And I think a lot of parents would be able to see that. But it's scary too, because it's so quick. And I worry about that because it does create anxiety. One of the things that we've been talking about in some of our presentations is should. And it's one of the words that we talk about.
Good word.
And it's a word that creates anxiety. And if it's you or I should have done that, or I should have sent that email, or I should have reached out. And what happens with the word should, especially as a parent or even as a professional, oftentimes that drives anxiety. And so we talk about that one a lot. And and the other one was I don't know with kids. Why didn't you do this? I don't know. Well, where is such as? I don't know. And so we talk a lot about that in more closed groups and kind of workshops, more leadership style workshops that we work with a lot of the teens.
Right.
And understand with staff, should is a tough word, because you're creating your own anxiety when you start saying should.
Oh, I should have. Right.
So it's something that it's not something it's not a focal point of what we do, but it is something that
is it something that we need to take that word out of vocabulary and change it? How do you change something like that up?
I don't know. I think I have to say, and speaking as a father of a kid that struggles with the massive anxieties of testing.
Yeah.
I've really done a ton of homework and a ton of research in testing. And when it was President Bush launched it the third day of his was a No Child Left Behind,
Right.
And then we went to Race to the Top with the new presidential election. And Race to the Top, I always think it's funny because it's called Race to the Top, but the logo looks like two snails. And I always thought it's not racing very high to the top.
Yeah, there we go.
But that's my sarcasm. But there's some aspects of how many we have kids that are they're assessed over 100 times from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Yeah.
And I know in my household and a lot of other parents I've talked to and a lot of teachers, the teachers, I talk to those folks and the anxiety is just it's
for
gone
them
to
too.
Huge.
Yeah.
And I have so much compassion for what teachers are doing for kids, but I feel bad that they have that. And and there's some components to that where some of our teaching programs have lighter numbers now, and that's some of the research that we're looking at too. Is why are our teacher programs? We have amazing. Spokane's it's amazing here. We have some of the best around.
Yeah,
so.
And I think that leads into some of that teacher shortage stuff as well. So. You talked about doing some research.
Sure.
I know that you're getting ready to write a book or working on a book. So, it'll be out there.
Yeah.
So talk to me briefly about education.
Yeah. So it's called, that's funny. It's called Blurred Education.
Yeah.
We are looking at some, and it's spelled education. We spell education wrong.
Yeah.
Just kind of as the point being is, how are we looking at education? I think a lot of things have opened up my eyes. I was so impressed with the Massachusetts system of education. And then you look at other states that are not on the same page. But, you look at, and I mentioned Finland, I look at some of the other countries. When No Child Left Behind was first established, it was 49 countries, and all of a sudden, unfortunately, we were at the not bottom, but we were on the bottom tier, and so that's what drove us to start getting it. The challenge was, I'm concerned is who is the testing benefiting? And when I started looking at who's who's testing benefiting, I looked at like Pearson, who is a huge and this is where a lot of people won't say something about this, but I'm okay with it. I mean, there are amazing individuals, extremely talented people that work for Pearson. But however, they've targeted about 50% of the market.
You bet.
Everything from testing from kindergarten all the way to, it's a K-12 to GED to a lot of different things.
There's a lot.
And so I'm not saying it's benefiting them. I'm just trying to figure out. And then when we get into testing and who's evaluating it, then I go to research and I find out that they're going to Craigslist to find evaluators to grade it. And so talking to some of those people of just researching and saying, okay, help me understand. So you were one that graded that test.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah.
Help me understand that. And so now there's a lot of research going through it saying, wow, okay, is the test valid?
Yeah.
What's this doing to our folks, our amazing educators and our kiddos?
Right, right. So it's got to be fascinating to kind of start to dig into that.
It is.
You start to think about Craigslist, finding that's where they're evaluating it.
Yeah, buy a couch and, get a test.
Jeez.
So,
Doug, our time's starting to wrap up here. And so you've got some great things out on social media. LinkedIn has been a big piece, and I follow you on LinkedIn, and I know that you have Twitter as well. So where can people find you out there? Because, just kind of to follow, because you do have some great positive things out there.
Oh, thanks. One of the things, Twitter's a big one, and LinkedIn. I never in 100 years did I think that this was going to be sustainable. I just wanted to do it as a bucket list item and get into some schools and perform and work with kids and work with staff and work with different businesses. But then it just kind of word of mouth, and one of the benefits of social media has really opened up some nice doors. And I can't even say thank you enough for the opportunity just to chat with you. And I think our conversation could go hours.
Oh, we can keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's your handle on Twitter?
Doug Cap. So it's KAP though. It's so Doug Cap.
Okay, and then what about LinkedIn? What do they need to do?
My regular name, Doug Kaplicky,
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful. Doug, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
And everybody, we'll catch you next time on Education 101.
Education 101 is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Education 101 is brought to you by our friends at STCU. Ask Erik a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com.